Hello.
Good morning, Deb.
Good morning, Catherine. It's so great to see you, and welcome to the conference, everyone. I would love to introduce Catherine Johns, who is joining us today for her session, which is compelling communication for entrepreneurs. So, Catherine guides executives and entrepreneurs to craft a clear, compelling message and deliver it with confidence, charisma, and originality so that they can fascinate their audience and achieve their business goals. She's a veteran broadcaster and communication consultant and provides coaching and training in executive presence, networking, and public speaking. So today, Catherine is going to help us understand and share with us clear, persuasive communication and how it can be the key to unlocking success for any business leader. From pitching investors to inspiring a team, entrepreneurs must master the art of conveying their vision effectively. So, her session will offer practical strategies for crafting powerful messages and how to cultivate presence and confidence when speaking in front of others. So, Catherine, thank you again for being with us. The floor is yours.
It is my pleasure, Deb. Here's the thing when you're at a trade show, and wasn't that interesting hearing about how to use trade show appearances to your benefit? When
Absolutely.
you're at a trade show, when you're in a meeting with a potential investor, when you're talking to somebody that you might partner with on a project, what you have in common in all those situations is you. You bring your presence, your energy, your physicality into all of those situations. And those are the things that shape the way our meetings, our pitches, our appeals turn out. So, we're going to talk for the next 45 minutes or so about you and how you show up. You may have questions, you may have disagreements, and that's fine. I'm looking for any comments you have in the chat. And then Ram and Deb will join me later on and we'll have some conversation, hopefully representing you. So feel free to pitch in at any time. When you start with any of these meetings or situations, the first thing you want to do is get present. And that can be a challenge. On the surface, it seems obvious, right? I mean, of course I'm present, I'm here. But in truth, we're often miles away in our head. You've been in a situation, I'll bet, where you're sitting in a meeting and suddenly you realize that you missed the last thing the person said because you were thinking ahead to something that's going to happen later today or something that happened earlier or wondering about the person who didn't show up for this meeting and what's up with them. So, taking care of that, all those thoughts that can crowd the present out and getting right here, right now, is the first step towards success in achieving the funding, the partnership, the sale. How do you do it? It turns out your body is actually the key because, in truth, my mind can be a million miles away. My feelings can be all over the map, but my body is right here, right now with you. So I'm going to ask you to do something with me now. And I can't see you. So, honor system, I'm counting on you to play along with this. Wherever you're sitting in front of a computer or a phone, maybe a tablet, adjust yourself so your feet are on the floor flat. Maybe you're sitting cross legged, or maybe you have your feet tucked up underneath you, or maybe your ankles are crossed. Uncross, open yourself, and put your feet flat on the floor. And with your feet flat on the floor, settle yourself into your seat, whether you're on a kitchen table, chair, or a couch, or if you're in your office. Just, wiggle yourself into your seat and really sense both of your sit bones grounded on your chair. If you've ever done yoga, you know about adjusting the sit bones. So that's what we're looking for here, really planted in the space you're in. Are you playing along? Honor system now. Straighten your spine and do this with me as well. So here I am, grounded, feet on the floor, seat in the chair, straight spine. I drop my shoulders. Do you notice when you get intense or interested or nervous, you have a tendency to pull your shoulders up and maybe lean forward, like getting a little hunched? Well, relax all of that. And my shoulders are back and down. And already I feel more open. My chest is open. My head is straight up and down on top of my body. And I'm very aligned and I can breathe. It's shocking how often we stop breathing. We get nervous about, imagine I'm meeting with somebody important or I'm waiting for a meeting and it hasn't happened yet and I don't know how it's going to go. And there's all of that nervousness and tension and it shows up in my body. So when I do this relaxation exercise, I let go of all of that. And now my core is straight, but also free. So think about your spine coming straight up from your sit bones and as if your head is pointed straight at the ceiling. And allow yourself to breathe fully and deeply. And with that as a foundation, we're able to meet anybody anywhere because we know where we are and we know who we are. And we're here now, present and ready. And we're also sitting kind of still or standing. You might be, if you're at a trade show or a networking event, you might be standing. Same thing applies, right? You're grounded, feet on the floor, flat, not standing with your ankles crossed or any of that jazz, right? You're really grounded and centered. I'm here, I'm present, and I'm kind of still. Now, as I'm talking to you, of course, I move my hands, I move my head, but it's movement with intention. So when I say stillness matters, what I mean in terms of setting a tone that says you're serious about your business, you're serious about your goals, you're serious about who you are and what you want to achieve. There's no fidgeting, there's no nervous movement. And in particular, you want to keep your hands away from your head or your face. Now, there's all kinds of cultural issues here. It was so interesting listening to Jonathan talk about cultural differences, how we look at people, how we interact with people. So I'm going to offer the caveat that I'm talking about North American business culture. And to the extent that we are operating in other parts of the world or that we're from other parts of the world, you need to take local custom into account. That thing about not touching the top of somebody's head, that was new to me. And there are tons of those things that, as we operate more internationally, can be a minefield. So, with that caveat, in general, you want to keep a certain stillness about yourself. So, I'm not scratching my face, I'm not playing with my hair, I'm not fidgeting with my clothes. Any of those kinds of movements convey a certain nervousness or uncomfortable setting. And we don't want to be uncomfortable because mirror neurons. Do you know about mirror neurons? Uh, Here's the gist. We mirror each other automatically, unconsciously, without thinking about it. It's the way our brains operate. And if you see me fidgety and uncomfortable and nervous, it's likely to make you fidgety, uncomfortable, and nervous. And that isn't most likely going to suit my business needs. I want us to have a conversation where we're both relaxed, comfortable, at ease with each other. So the more you can be still inside, think about it that way, and breathing, the more you create that sense with the other person or people that we can be relaxed together. And that inspires confidence and trust. When we fidget or bounce around or pace, or when we have these nervous, restless movements, then that conveys the opposite. It makes people back away a little bit, a little suspicious, like what's up with them? So think about using your hands and using them intentionally. Um, in general, probably you want to keep your hands to yourself. Touching can be a minefield. So even a simple touch like reaching over and patting somebody's hand or touching their arm, especially in early meetings, probably to be avoided unless you really know somebody well. So my hands are in my own space, but then within that they move. People actually do want to see our hands. We are perceived as being more above board when our hands are visible. So if you're meeting and you're seated at a table, you don't want to keep your hands under the table hidden from view. Have them on top of the table or on the arm of a chair or in motion as you use them to gesture. If you're standing in a quick conversation, you don't put your hands folded behind your back. You keep them out where people can see them. And I have clients tell me all the time, I don't know what to do with my hands. The truth is, most of us do know because we do it naturally. Gestures come naturally to us. When we get nervous and overthink it, then then we get into trouble. Then we want to hide our hands or we get fidgety or nervous movement we want to avoid. But natural, see your hands movement is fine and in fact preferred. What about your face? A smile helps. It can be challenging sometimes for women, younger women especially. If you're meeting with people who are older than you, people who are mostly men, yeah, there can be a tendency to smile in a sort of self-effacing or ingratiating way. The more powerful people are, the less they smile. That doesn't mean we bring grumpy face to a meeting, but it does mean we smile to connect with people, but not to beg them to like us. I bet you know the difference. And you might put in the chat if any of this is sounding familiar to you, or if you have questions about any of it. Maybe you're listening and going, I was in a meeting recently. I would love to hear what situations you've been in where this kind of thing comes up. A huge issue when it comes to interpersonal meetings, whether they're live in person or through technology. And more of our meetings are through Zoom or Teams or some other virtual platform. A huge issue is eye contact. So we're going to spend some time on this, and I'm going to count on you to play along with me. And again, even though I can't see you, this will benefit you enormously if you do it with me. So let's talk about when we're meeting with one or two people and we want to make steady eye contact. In North American business culture, eye contact conveys honesty, trust, openness, interest. And conversely, if I'm not looking at you, you're talking to me and I'm looking at the floor or gazing off into space, what does that say? I'm not as interested, right? I'm not as engaged. You don't have my full attention. So you want to be able to look at somebody and not to stare at them and bore a hole into their head, right? It's not a staring contest. And there are certainly cultural considerations here. But my goal for you is that you are so comfortable with eye contact that you can look directly at somebody, describe your business idea, apply for a position, talk to them about the funding you need, and come across as confident and serious about your business. And if you can't look at somebody, if it makes you nervous, if you're looking away, if your eyes are darting around the room, they are less likely to have confidence and trust in you. So, this is something you would know about yourself better than I could possibly know about you. And you know whether perhaps you need a little practice on this. What about when you've got a whole group of people? You might be standing in front of a room of 30 people, or maybe you're at a conference table and there are 6 or 7 people around the table. Now we need to be able to include everybody in eye contact. And the way people often do that is is to sort of scan the group like this. So I know I'm supposed to make eye contact with people, and so I look around like sort of frantically trying to connect with everybody. Here's what happens if I do that. I don't connect with anybody. Nobody feels real contact if I'm darting around the room like this. And so instead, here's what we do when we have a group of people in front of us. And again, it's true whether it's a small group at a conference table or you're sitting in a big meeting room and there's 30 people in front of you, or you're giving a talk in front of 100 or more. I want to look at a person, complete a complete thought, and then look at somebody else. So I engage each person individually with my eyes. And you can see how I'm doing this now as if there's a room full of people in front of me. And I come back to you because you're part of the room. And then I look at somebody else. What you'll notice when I do this is that it's sort of measured. I'm not darting. I'm not trying to look at everybody at once, getting nervous because I can't make contact with people. I'm comfortably, confidently engaging with you, and then with somebody else who's seated over here, and then that person in the back. And there's somebody who didn't come sit at the conference table, but they're on the side of the room taking notes. I include them, and then I come back to you. And do you see how comfortable that is? And what you feel is a sense of contact. It's not an accident that we call it eye contact because it's all about the contact. And that contact is often missing in meetings, particularly when we're meeting with a larger group. Often, if I'm speaking about my business and I'm excited, or maybe I'm nervous, I can get kind of antsy and be trying to look at everybody and get like that. And you see the difference in that compared to a more measured engage with a person, invite them to connect with me, close that connection, and then move on. Closing the connection matters. So I don't just shift my eye contact willy nilly. I finish a complete thought with an individual, and then I move on to somebody else. And what that does is keep each of these little connections with each person in the room as I continue to connect with the other people in the room. One thing you'll notice is when you use eye contact strategically like that in a group, big group, small group, doesn't matter. People start to pay more attention to you. You'll notice that people stay engaged. They don't look at their phones. They don't start side conversations with somebody else because they don't know when you're coming back to them. And so those little moments of connection with each person help everybody stay with you. People often complain, speakers, I'm a professional speaker. My fellow speakers complain that people get on their phones and they don't pay attention, especially in a bigger audience. I don't tend to run into that, and it's because of eye contact. So if this is challenging for you, it's something worth practicing. And you practice when there's nothing writing on it. You don't practice in a big meeting where you're making a pitch. You practice with friends, with family, but really get comfortable with eye contact. Now, when we started meeting on virtual platforms, that kind of threw a wrench into it for a lot of people, didn't it? Because here's what you'll see. People are in Zoom meetings or on Teams, whatever platform it might be, WebEx, and they're staring at the pictures on their screen. So you can see what happens when I'm looking at a picture of a person on my screen. I could be looking at your picture on my screen, but you don't feel it, do you? As far as you're concerned, I'm looking off at the floor because that's what it looks like. And so when we meet virtually, we make eye contact with the people in our audience by looking through the camera. And I use that language deliberately, through the camera, not at it. So it's as if you are right on the other side of my computer. Now, the truth is, there's a gangway and the wall of the house next door that I'm looking at. But in my imagination, it's you. And as I look through the camera, I'm seeing you. I'm talking to you. You might, as a way to play with this, think about being on the phone. If you were talking on the phone, you wouldn't think of yourself as talking to the phone. You think of yourself as talking to a friend. The phone is just the vehicle that gets your voice to their ears and their voice to your ears. The same way when you're on a virtual meeting, the camera, the microphone are just the conduit to get you, your energy, your presence to the other person. And really, when I say energy, that's what all of this is about. People pick up on your energy and they are drawn to it like a magnet or not. And when we are seeking information, acceptance, money, investment, any of it, we want people to feel our energy. We want people to have that sense that we're real and we're with them. And you get that by working the camera. Now, a lot of times clients will tell me they need to look at the screen so they can see the other person's face. And it's true. If your faces were on my screen right now, I would want to take a break and look at somebody's face and see, do they look like they're with me? Do they look bored? Are they laughing at my humor? Are they angry about something I'm saying? We read all that in people's faces. So yes, you are going to take a moment for that. But you come back, and particularly when you're speaking, and especially when you're speaking about what's really important, when you're delivering your main message, you want to be doing it looking through the camera as if the person you're talking with is right on the other side. Now, I need some feedback, so please put in the chat, does that make sense to you? Are you practicing along with me? Because that was my deal, right? You're on the honor system to be doing this with me, even though I can't see you. But I hope you'll let us know how that feels for you. And there are all kinds of factors that enter into it. If I'm in a meeting with the CEO of my company and I am a new hire, I may be less inclined to look him right in the eye for the whole thing, or her, right? Because there's a certain deference that we indicate by looking usually down. But we don't want to get stuck there, is the thing. So you can think through the particular situations you get into and where that kind of contact might feel not quite right. But most of the time, in most business situations, That straight on gaze is what works. You know, when I started wearing glasses full time, I worried about this because it does. I know on the camera sometimes the angle changes and my eyes are not as visible. I have other glasses that are very chic that I love, but when I speak, I wear these because they're wider lenses and more of my eyes show. When you're talking to another human being, whether it's one on one in a small group around a conference table or in a cafe, or you're in front of an audience giving a speech, eye contact is probably the biggest tool you have going for you. I'm checking to see if I have time for a quick story. When I started doing presentation skills training, I went to work for a company that did that. And that was a whole new thing for me. I had been in radio for 25 years. What do we know about radio? There's no eye contact there. And I didn't realize that I had a problem with eye contact. If you'd asked me, I would have said, "Ah, yeah, it's fine. I can look anybody in the eye." Well, the truth was, I didn't. I talked to people quite often, kind of looking off like this. And you can see when I talk to you looking off like this, it's not the same, is it? There's a missing connection. So when I went to work for this company and they were appalled at my inability with eye contact, I had a lot to learn. And so I tell you that story in order to tell you that it's a learnable skill for sure. And what I did was practice. At dinner with friends or getting together with colleagues in the office, I practiced say something to a person, come to the end of a thought, shift to another person, come to the end of a thought, shift to another person until I paused, and then somebody else, and so on. And once you get into that habit, that's what it is, a habit. And it's really simple. And it has a mesmerizing effect on your audiences. You can probably think of occasions when it would be very useful for you to be so persuasive in a meeting. Eye contact will help you do that. Now, I hope you've been practicing along with me. A couple of other things we want to cover before we join in with Ram and Deb and have some questions. So if you have questions for them to pose, now's the time to put it in the chat. We talked about being grounded, being centered, having your feet on the floor. What that allows is a full, rich voice. This is an issue, especially when we're nervous or when we feel like there's a lot riding on this meeting or this conversation. Our voice tends to tighten up. You've probably noticed for yourself times when your voice sounds higher or maybe even squeakier, and it's because everything in our body clenches and the sound gets squeezed. So a relaxed body, a grounded body allows for a voice that comes from the core. And so I want you to do this with me. Allow, just breathe all the way from your belly. You're sitting with your feet on the floor and your spine is straight, and you take a breath and you can feel your belly move in and out. So you're not breathing in here. This is how often, and especially when we're tense, we tend to breathe more shallowly. So our chest moves as we breathe, but not so much down in our core. You want to breathe all the way down so you fill your lungs completely, your diaphragm moves, and your belly moves in and out. And you have full breath support so that your voice is strong and rich. And if you're in a room with a bunch of people, you can project and have some volume to it. You also want to vary the volume. And this is something I notice when people are in meetings where they're pitching an idea or whether they're seeking buy in or funding, that a tense, loud voice becomes kind of a habit. Like I so want to make my point that I get louder and tighter. You want to speak with a relaxed voice and you want some variety. And the truth is, sometimes a whisper is as powerful as a shout. Do you hear that when I reduce my volume and then increase it? Those are ways that we keep our audiences engaged. What you'll notice when you're talking to a group, conference table group, cafe table group, meeting room group, almost doesn't matter. When you're talking to a group and you reduce your volume, you'll see people kind of lean in or cock their heads towards you, like they want to hear what you're saying. It creates a sense of maybe drama is too strong, but enough interest that it draws people in. And then sometimes you stop talking. I was talking earlier about eye contact and how powerful that is. It is an amazing tool for speakers. And another powerful tool for speakers is the pause. When we're talking, especially when we have a goal, when we want something out of this interaction, whether it's a partnership or funding or a sale, when we want something, we have a tendency to get tense and to keep talking and to sort of go like that and keep, because if I stop, then they'll talk and I don't know what they'll say. So I just want to keep talking. I need to overcome that impulse and instead say what I need to say and pause. And what's conveyed in that pause? Like, think about for yourself, what comes up for you when I pause that way? I seem confident, right? I seem open to you because I paused. I'm not just throwing things at you verbally. I seem interested in a dialogue. And all of those are useful things when we have a business goal in mind. So, for a lot of people, pausing is hard. They get self conscious in the silence. They're, Americans talk all the time about an awkward pause. And I never understand why pauses are awkward. Pauses are an opportunity, a little bit of rest, a chance for the other person to speak, a time to regroup. They can set the stage for what comes next and build anticipation. Here's what I'd like to tell you. Pause. And doesn't that make you want to go, oh yeah, what's she about to tell me? What's coming next? Now notice that I just went, because I was about to say what gets in the way of pausing is talking too fast, talking too much, and filler language, uhs, like stammering or stuttering or just not wanting the silence. So try to work on letting the pause be still. And you can practice that. And the truth is, some filler language is natural. And you sound almost robotic if you use none. At least that's true in English. And I'm going to guess that's true in most languages. Everybody uses their share of filler. What happens when we get nervous is we tend to repeat a word or a phrase often. And you'll hear people with kind of a pet word that's their filler. It might be, or it might be like, or it might be some other kind of idiom. Does that make sense? People will say, finish a sentence and say, does that make sense? And then about the fourth or fifth time you hear it, does that make sense? You want to say, yes, it makes sense already. No need to keep asking. But they're not really asking a question. They're filling space. So I want you to get comfortable with that space unfilled. And if filler language is an issue for you, I really recommend practice. And again, you practice in a safe space. You practice with friends or family in conversations where your business is not riding on the outcome of the conversation. So you allow yourself to get used to that silence. Those moments of pausing give your words more impact. And before we wrap up, and Deb and maybe Ram too are going to join me for some exchange here, I want to mention one other thing. I've been talking about talking because that's what I was asked to speak about. I want to throw in a pitch for listening. As important as it is how you express yourself in the meetings that you're having, whether they're formal meetings or casual encounters, when you're launching a business or growing a business or looking to start a business and you're not yet sure what it is, you have a lot to learn. And we rarely learn by talking. So I'm going to encourage you to zero in on zipping it and listening to the other person or people, asking questions, and allowing people the space to talk to you. It's amazing how smart people think you are when you listen to them. I'm not kidding. They walk away from those interactions going, wow, that was great. That person really knows their stuff. And it's because they felt free to share. And if you think about your own experience, I bet you can come up with examples of times when people didn't listen to you, when somebody just talked at you for 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever, and you left that conversation feeling exhausted or bored, or certainly not drawn in and wanting more. And so it can be the hardest thing because you're enthusiastic about your business, your idea, your concept. You're eager to share it. So I'm going to ask you to go back to that grounded sensation we worked with earlier. Be in your body and be still and give somebody else the opportunity to share their ideas with you. One good way to do that is to tag what you say with a question about them. And the easiest one is, and you? So you talk about your experience, and you, and that invites people to share their experience. And the last thing I'll say is when you are speaking about your business, your idea, your project, your plans, be sure that you speak about it in the context of the people or person that you're talking with. So think about this as putting a frame around what you say. And the frame is their story, their business, their life. So we have permission in a meeting to speak about what we came to talk about. And we want to make sure that we engage them and invite them. And one way to do that is to put it in a frame of their life, their business, and their experience. So you're always driving home, what does this mean for the other person? And sometimes you need to spell that out with so that, or what this means for you is. That is not only a clarion call to them, but it's a reminder to you to keep that in mind. We're not in a meeting to just blather about ourselves. We're in a meeting to get agreement, get buy-in, share information, make a sale. And we can't do that if it's just a monologue about us and our business. So we listen and we frame what we say in the context of our listeners. And with all of that, I'm going to encourage you to come to all of those situations with these tips and pointers in mind, but also with you being fully you. And that wraps what I need to say. So, Deb, I'm hoping that you have a question, a comment, an observation, or maybe you can share something that somebody else has provided in the
Abs-
chat.
Absolutely, Catherine. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
That was great. I want you to know that I, for one, I hope everybody, as I'm sitting squarely in my chair with my feet on
Yes.
the floor,
Yes.
and I'm looking at you through my camera. Directly
Yes.
at you. So I took your remarks to heart here, and so thank you again for that. It's interesting in your book. For everybody who is interested in Catherine's book, Show Up and Shine. It's a great book. You talk a lot about presence and establishing presence and credibility. So can you speak a little bit about what we can all do as entrepreneurs, business owners to develop a stronger presence when speaking either publicly, speaking in meetings, speaking in front of clients? What can we do there?
Think about the energy that you exchange with your audience. It's very easy, especially when it's a big meeting and it's important to us and there's a lot riding on us. And we get so focused on the specific things we're going to say. And we might write it out or we might make notes for ourselves about the words that we need to say. I'm not dismissing the importance of words. I am saying that people walk away with a sense of who you are that doesn't have a lot to do with the words. And it does have to do with all the things we've just been talking about. And so being physically present, acknowledging them, listening, those are the things that make people leave with a sense of not only that we are interesting or engaging, but that we know what we're talking about. So, particularly for younger people, that can be a challenge. It's easy for people to think, well, she's new or he's young, and maybe we don't know so much. So, very important to be fully present, to grow. Like, I hope you can see me. I just sort of grounded my sit bones in my chair, and I could feel myself get just, a fraction of an inch taller because here I am making my point. You can do that too. It's not aggressive, it's not badgering people or threatening people, but it is being very, very present. And when I do that, I make an impression on people that's quite different than if I come to a meeting and talk like this. Do you see how just everything changes when I shift into a more passive or slouchy position? There's a place for this for sure. If Deb is talking and I'm listening, I might sort of settle in, get comfortable, and hear her story. But when it's time for me to speak, to make my point, to drive things home, I come back to centered, grounded, and fully present.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. Another question that we have here is there's a lot of conversation about the use of storytelling. And can you share how we can all use storytelling in our communications how could we be more effective doing that?
So I have a preference, and I think it's pretty widely shared actually, for brief stories. If I had a criticism of many people in meetings, it would be that they tell a story that goes on and on and on and contains a lot of unnecessary detail. And we lose people. The truth is, attention spans are short and they're getting shorter. So, first of all, when you think about the stories in your life, stories about your experience or your business, that are meaningful to your audience and that will help drive your point home. What detail is necessary? Because details can be quite interesting. We need some detail because it keeps people engaged. But what details are boring and don't belong in the story? So edit yourself. And that would be the first thing. Short and sweet and to the point. And then frame your story in the context of their experience. I talked a little bit earlier about the frame.
Mm-hmm.
If I just blather on about myself, I could tell you stories about my radio career for the next hour and a half, maybe
I was
more.
actually going to ask you about that. And if we have time, I will.
It was a long career. There's a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And some of them are germane to what we're doing here, and some of them aren't. So I edit, and I do tell stories when I speak to audiences about lessons I learned in radio that might be valuable for them. I don't tell stories about that funny thing that Jeff Hendricks said in 1985 because they don't care, right? So be selective about your stories, and then it helps to think about the frame of the other person. What's important to them, and are there ways to relate this? I use little phrases. I think of them as conversational lubricant. So an example might be, maybe you've seen how this can happen. You know how things like that draw people in because it tickles their own experience, and so they relate to mine. The truth is, not that many people have been on the radio. That's the whole world doesn't have that experience, but everybody's had the experience of a conversation that went south. So I can tell a story about radio about a conversation that went south, and I'll just share that there were many, and make that relatable to you because that you've experienced, not exactly in the same way. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Am I clear?
No, that's
Okay.
fantastic. No, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. We have another question as relates to the internal communication with your team. So, a lot of us are entrepreneurs. Many are starting to add resources. They're hiring people, building their team. Can you share a little bit about how, as entrepreneurs, as leaders, we can all improve our communication internally with our people, especially when, a lot of times entrepreneurs are struggling in the early days. What can we all do to be better internal communicators?
So I'm going to say the same rules apply that I've been talking about. And the difference might be that with our own team, our colleagues, we may be much more informal, and that is appropriate some of the time. And some of the time, not so much, right? So it's about having a judgment about when are we colleagues and when are we in a hierarchy. And there are times when I need to be the leader of the team. And how do I convey that? It's not by coming in and saying, hey, I'm the boss here. It is by looking like a boss, sounding like a boss, dressing like a boss. All of those things convey the message without words. And when I have those things going for me, the way I speak, the way I look, the way I dress, then I don't need to throw my weight around.
Very, very interesting. Very powerful.
Nonverbal. It's all nonverbal.
Nonverbal communication, right? Just as important. Again, Catherine, thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us all. I highly encourage everybody to go get Catherine's book, Show Up and Shine. It's an amazing book, and I loved it when you first published it, and it's out there on Amazon. So please go take a look. And Catherine, just quickly, how can people find you?
CatherineJohns.com. Easy. And also, I'm on LinkedIn, and I'm going to guess most of the people listening to us are also on LinkedIn. So please reach out to me and connect there. I would love to see more about what you're doing. And if you show up in my LinkedIn feed, that would be great. And maybe even share some comments back and forth.
That would be great. And again, you have a newsletter too. So make sure you subscribe to Catherine's newsletter. You provide great information to people, great tips on a frequent basis. So make sure you subscribe to her newsletter. Again, thank you so much for being with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
And don't forget, there is an step about business with Catherine Jones, a whole hour. It's amazing. You should check it out.
It's a great show.
I forgot about that. Yes, I'm on TV, right?
You're on Foodie TV. So everybody take a look at that show.
Love that.
We talked a lot about your book there too. So
yeah.
wonderful.
All right. Thank you so
Thanks
much
again.
for having me. It's been a pleasure being part of your conference.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Bye-bye.